Well then, everyone, we are back. Literally 2 days after we brought you our last piece of content. So if you didn't know, which you wouldn't know because we didn't really announce it to anyone, we are going to be trying, where possible, so as much as we can, to bring you a live update post-quali. Okay, every single week. That is our intention. Every single week there's a race, of course. Naturally, we're not going to always be able to commit to that, but if you do want to stay up to date, you can follow us on social media. You can head over to TikTok and Instagram, where we'll keep you up to date with all the latest news. Plus, we will bring you a bucket load more of F1 content. So just search BoxBox, because we are BoxBox Podcast, powered by BoxBox Club. And I highly recommend that you try out the BoxBox Club app. The link will be in the description to this video, and you can get an exclusive 30% discount off the Ultra subscription when you use code BoxBoxPod30. Or alternatively, if you just want to try out the app, it is absolutely free. So I do encourage you to do that, because it does make your phone so much more F1 friendly, and it looks exquisite. So yeah, that is pretty much all the niceties. Let's get on with the show.
All right, guys, welcome along. So it's a bit different, this one, because obviously we don't have to talk about qualifying. Qualifying is done. We've spoken about it. It's past. We can solely focus. We can solely focus on the race. And,
yeah, well, this is the thing. So YouTube viewers, obviously, we're not uploading these as video, these post-quali breakdowns, just because we want them to be really quick and reactive. So YouTube viewers, you are going to have to head over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any other audio platform that you consume your podcasts on in order to consume that qualifying content. However, this is obviously going to go up on YouTube. And yeah, if you want to preface this and you want to listen about quali, go back and listen to our last episode. If you don't, you're in the right place, because we're talking about the world's most boring race.
And I hope you've woke up. I mean, for some people, it will just go into your night's sleep. You know, the race started at 7. Some people, you just continue all the way through now.
I could have drifted off through that, genuinely. Do you know what I was thinking? I was thinking, fair play to Crofty and Martin Brundle, because they were making it sound like an entertaining race.
I mean, even at one point, Crofty went, there's still a long time to go in this race, and basically going, I hope something is going to happen.
Saying, there's still a long time in this race, like it's a good thing. I was thinking, fucking hell, I want it to be over. Don't say stuff like that.
Granted, things happened, but similar to Barcelona, they happen in the final 10 laps of the race. And look, I love Canada. I think it's a fantastic track. I love playing on the game. It looks great. We've had some great races over the year, but this was a bore fest. And it was, and I'll put it in our group chat beforehand, it was a DRS train central. That's all we had. Not really many overtakes. Well, we say that. We may have had overtakes in the back of the field, but up front there was barely nothing. But yeah, it was a bore fest, and I want to hear from you guys. Do you agree with us? And I know some F1 fans will go, well, no, it's still a good race. A lot happened, and you've got Kimi on the podium, getting his first podium. But overall, for me personally, that was boring.
From a racing perspective, it absolutely was, and I don't think anyone's going to sit there and deny that. We always say this. We didn't see the overtakes where they matter. And fair enough, I know there are 20 cars on the grid, and it is about all of them. But ultimately, we didn't get that action up front. Until the two McLarens got very, very close to each other. And then eventually, they got too close to each other. And yeah, we're going to discuss that at some point. But that was pretty much the highlight of the race.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you're going into this race going, okay, so the Mercedes race pace may not be as good. The degradation, it was a hot race, may not be as good. So they're unlikely to win. McLaren's look strong all weekend. They're bound to, get on the podium or even a win. those things didn't happen. Those things actually made it quite exciting from a point of view of actually things which you expected to happen didn't actually happen. And we'll delve into that, and we'll do what we normally do. We'll go through each team and break it down. And where would you like to start? And like Luke said, we will get on to Norris and Piastri, but do bear with us. Where do you want to start, Luke?
Do you know, I want to start with Williams because, look, it turned out Carlos Sainz, very, very good recovery race. Okay, I know we said we're not going to talk about quali, but we have to look back to the impeding that he suffered from Isaac Hadjar, who did rightfully receive a 3-place grid penalty.
And openly came out afterwards and said, look, Carlos, sorry. He was told that he was on a cool-down lap. He apologised. Fair play to Isaac.
There's nothing you can do about it, right? It's one of those things. And we said in Saturday's podcast that there's got to be someone smart enough to figure out a way in which it doesn't impair the driver that has been impeded, because ultimately a 3-place grid penalty to Isaac Hadjar does nothing for Carlos Sainz. Now, fortunately, he recovered it. He ended up with a point. Now, you can argue that is partly because Lando Norris DNF'd, but ultimately, even finishing P11, what a recovery drive, right?
Yeah.
But you then have to look at the other side of the garage. Alex Albon, I've got some serious concerns over him, right? And let me break them down. I love Alex Albon, right? I think he's a great personality. I think he's a really quick driver. But I see flaws in him. And I think his decision making is one of them. Now, just because it's easy for recent memory, just look at Barcelona. He put himself in an unnecessary situation. And he did the exact same today. Go on lap 1, going into that turn with Franco Colapinto, he knew he was never making that corner. Okay?
Yeah.
And ultimately, it ended up costing him like 2 positions. So I feel like he's constantly, when he's in these situations, he always makes the wrong decision, and it's almost like impatience, because he knows he's quick. We know he's quick, but when he gets in these situations, he rushes it, and he ends up in these situations more often than not. I feel like I've seen that from him, and I feel like that's something he needs to work on. You then hear him come over the radio later on in the race, and he's frustrated, he's wound up. I know he's talking about strategy and everything, and he's talking about how they're not listening to him, but it's almost like an emotional thing. And I know they're 2 different circumstances, but they kind of relate to the same thing. He's letting this frustration build up and doing things that aren't reflective of how good of a driver he is.
Well, we said at the beginning of the season, didn't we, that he was doing brilliantly. He was making the right decisions. He was looking good. He had good pace. And these last few races, you're starting to see a very heated Albon over the radio. He's not afraid to have a go at the team and blame the team for certain decisions. And you saw that today with another, a cocky radio message at one point. But yeah, for Albon, it's a bit of a weird one. We're starting to see that turn, aren't we, with Carlos Sainz, and I suppose Carlos from his Ferrari days, his patience, his understanding of things that actually things will come throughout the race. You will get those times to when it will sway. But the issue is Alex is so, as you said, impatient to a certain extent that actually that is costing him.
And I think that is something that you learn at the top teams. Now, I know Alex has been at Red Bull, albeit not for very long, but I think it is something you learn at the top teams where it's a long race. When you're fighting at the back, sometimes you've got to just go for the move, right? When you're in the top teams, you can just be patient, bide your time, and the opportunity will present itself if you continue to drive in that way. And I just feel like he doesn't need to be making those rash decisions in a Williams, because they're not going for podiums, you know.
No.
They're just there trying to pick up the points along the way, minimize damage, so they're not forking out loads of money throughout the season. Knowing that we know the car's not in the wind tunnel, we know they're not developing this car, yet still they're in a really good place. So he just needs to focus on not putting the car in front of jeopardy and just bringing it home, being patient, and that is going to be the best outcome because he's a really quick driver and he's shown that. He just needs to switch on a little bit more, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And-
As you said,
Well, obviously, the day ended terribly for him because, again, another Mercedes power unit failure.
it's weird, isn't it? You're talking about Mercedes power engine failure. You got two Mercedes on the podium. You have seen the issues with Kimi over the last few races. So yeah, it is a concern if you are Mercedes. I know, you won't take too much, you won't lose too much sleep leaving Canada, especially after winning the race. But it is a concern that they are having these, power unit failures.
Yeah, it's definitely something they'll be thinking about. Look, Mercedes have been historically reliable, like very reliable, and even up until last year. But this year there is stuff creeping in, and yeah, they're not going to be walking away from Canada, with tears in their eyes. But that will be something they'll be thinking of because it is an issue that has been persisting this year. Although weirdly, it's not affected McLaren.
No. Again, I suppose it goes down to how you set up your car, isn't it? I guess. I'm not going to sit here and go, I'm an expert on how they set up cars, but yeah, it is weird. You haven't seen that with McLaren, have you?
No.
Just finishing off on Williams, Carlos Sainz, as you said, picking up a point. He'll be happy with that. It's damage limitations, really, after a difficult qualifying yesterday. Coming home with a P10, he'll take that. He's slowly but surely starting to look at one with that car now, isn't it? It's starting to gel a bit more.
Yeah, it's starting to look good. He's starting to settle in, and look, over the course of the season, Alex has been the better driver. We know that. I want him to maintain it. I want Williams to have two drivers that are on that level. And look, Alex didn't have a bad race because he was slow. He had a bad race because he was fast and he just got impatient, and ultimately they then messed up his strategy completely. And yeah, it was kind of race over. But again, ultimately picking up a point is a good weekend for Williams, but they are going to look at how it went so wrong for Alex Albon, aside from having to retire the car because it had gone wrong way before then.
I'm pretty sure Alex will say his piece in the post race debrief, I'm sure.
Yeah.
RBs, tough weekend, tough race. Liam Lawson, he ended up DNFing. Isaac Hadjar, P16, and it's not many times this season we sit here and go, it was a tough race for Isaac Hadjar, because normally he's either in the points or just outside. But today, tough for the RBs.
Yeah. Didn't really look at it most of the weekend, in fairness. Just
the degradation seemed very high on the RBs this weekend.
And another weekend where Isaac Hadjar has looked significantly stronger than his teammate Liam Lawson. So, look, it wasn't a good weekend for them. We said this about RB. They're not going to be consistently hitting the points. But the important thing is they've got a driver in Isaac Hadjar that when they are capable of getting there, he achieves it. Yeah. And they are going to start looking at Liam Lawson and thinking, something's not adding up here. Like, why is it not working? Because he shouldn't be this comprehensively beaten by his teammate all the time. We had high hopes for Lawson when he came in, and it's really just gone wrong with it. And I know it's not his fault he DNF'd, but I'm pretty certain, I don't know this for fact, I'm pretty certain they just retired the car to preserve the power unit because he was dead last.
And I think he just had some complications, which they just felt it was better just to retire the car.
So, but But that doesn't happen, if he's sort of P12, P11. That only happens if he's dead last,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
No, true. Where should we go next? Aston?
Yeah, again, sorry, I've got a little bit of like a minor hay fever thing, and it's like really like right here in my throat. So I'm not ill.
If you're new to this podcast, one thing you will know is Luke suffers from hay fever. It's a yearly thing on the podcast where we hear about it for a few weeks at a time.
I have had my injection now, so it is. If I hadn't had it, I'd be a spluttering mess right now. I'd look disgusting. I'd have puffy eyes. I've had snot like running out my nose relentlessly. But it's just mild.
If he's selling it to you, this is what you need to tune in for.
But this is sitting right here in my throat, and it's just making me want to cough the whole time. So I'm really sorry, because I know you've got to listen to this, and I've got a microphone right by my mouth. So please don't turn off because of that. I can't help it. I'm sick. You wouldn't do it if it was terminal, so don't do it just because it's hay fever.
You're gonna use your Instagram voice for this.
I don't have one, but anyway, Aston Martin, right? Really bad weekend for Lance Stroll, and this was his lowest finish at his home Grand Prix ever.
Yeah, he's got points every race so far except today.
Yeah, and
I mean, look, we've said our bits on Lance Stroll. We've said he doesn't look at it. He doesn't look really up for it. He's for me. He doesn't deserve that seat, and I know that sounds quite harsh, but Lance Stroll showed once again this weekend. He just looked like he just wasn't interested.
If you can't do it in front of your home crowd, who can you do it in front of? Absolutely no one at this point is going to motivate Lance Stroll to go and win a race. He just doesn't have it in him anymore, and you could argue he never did. I don't want to talk shit about him because it's just unnecessary, but how many times are we going to have to sit here and say, Aston Martin, sort your team out? If you're serious, if you're spending cash on Adrian Newey, throwing money at infrastructure, where are you going to get with Lance Stroll? Because Fernando Alonso finished in the points, and that car is not great. Alonso came in after FP3, pretty sure it was FP3, and said the car's undrivable. Well, then he goes and sticks it, P6 in quali, and then ends up comfortably in the points, P7. And granted, he gained a position because Lando Norris DNF'd, but he was still going to be P8 in a car that has looked really, really poor this season. And then you've got his teammate ending dead last. And I know we had 3 retirements, but I'm confident Alex Albon wouldn't have finished behind him. Lando Norris definitely wouldn't have finished behind him. So come on, you can read between the lines here. It's not good enough, and that they're simply going to have to do something about it if they want to be taken seriously. I would never advocate for someone to lose their job, but it's not like he's going to have to live in a tent if he loses his job.
Fernando Alonso again showed what you can get out of that car, picking up a P7, solid race and solid weekend from Fernando, and it's exactly what he's needed, especially after a difficult start to the year. Obviously, he picked up some points in Barcelona, but he seems to be finding his groove again. And for Fernando fans and F1 fans who watching Fernando over the years, it's actually really nice to see that he's starting to get into his groove again. He showed exactly what you should be doing in that Aston Martin. And then you've got Lance Stroll 10 places later, 10 places lower, showing exactly how you should not do it in that Aston Martin. So, disappointing for Lance, but very solid weekend for Fernando.
And there's this, I know it's a bit of a joke, but there's this running thing of, Lance Stroll is carrying Aston Martin this season.
Yeah.
I know it's a joke, but factually, you can't really argue with it. However, this is how imperative it is that they do look into this driver lineup. Alonso has out-qualified Lance Stroll 10-0 this season.
Could have gone either way though.
yeah, it was close. It was touch and go. Do you know what I mean? That is just not acceptable. And Fernando Alonso, legend, by the way, unbelievable. He's an old man. He's genuinely probably not old enough to be my dad, but he shouldn't be carrying the team like this. Don't come at me with that points argument. I'm not fucking interested. He is carrying the team, and come the end of the season, he's obviously going to end up on more points. I would genuinely put money on it that Lance Stroll will not out-qualify him once this season, because I just genuinely don't think he cares. I don't think he's a bad driver. I don't think he sucks. I just think he doesn't care. His heart is not in it.
Do let us know what you think of Lance Stroll. Should Aston Martin replace him? Do drop a comment. Do let us know. Right.
Can I just come in with some breaking news?
Of course you
can. Obviously, we are recording this podcast literally straight after the race. It's currently 9:34. The race finished at 8:34, I think, right thereabouts. Antonelli, Piastri, Leclerc, Ocon, Sainz, Gasly and Stroll have all been noted for safety car infringements. So the FIA are reviewing a lot of incidents and penalties at the moment. So we will try and keep you up to date throughout the podcast if that changes. I know this is not live, but just so we can bring relevant information, because it sounds like the final order could change, but that is just my little bit onto the next team.
Please don't tell me Antonelli would lose a place after getting this first podium. That would be devastating.
Could be Antonelli, Piastri, Leclerc. Lewis could end up with a podium.
Okay, I'm really hoping they all get penalties and Lewis gets a podium. That'd be class. Right, next team. Let's go to Stake, shall we? Bortoleto 14th, Hulkenberg with another phenomenal weekend, picking up a P8. Look, what can you say about Hulkenberg? He's
sick.
He is just sick. Yeah, he's delivering, and he's taken this stake to just next levels. Considering how bad that car was last year, and in preparation, heading into 2026 with Audi, he's just delivering, and it's honestly great to see.
I know he's part of a wider project. And I know this state team is not reflective of where he should be or where he is, because they're working on this Audi thing for next year. Give him that second Red Bull seat. I genuinely think he can handle it. And I think Red Bull will be a much stronger team with Nico Hulkenberg sitting alongside Max Verstappen. I was backing Yuki Tsunoda, right? I don't want to see Yuki Tsunoda lose his seat. I certainly don't want to see him out of F1. But fundamentally, it's not working. I don't know why. Get Nico Hulkenberg the move he deserves for his career. He's been in the sport a long time now. He's not had a chance at a top team. And I think he's actually proving right now that he does deserve to be at a top team.
He's put in this stake, right, into the points, which is something that Yuki Tsunoda in that Red Bull is not doing. Look, mate, as I said, I love Yuki, but Nico Hulkenberg deserves an opportunity in a top team. Even as a second driver, he would deliver. He's
got double the amount of points as Yuki Tsunoda. He's got 20 points. Mad. Yuki Tsunoda has got 10 points. So,
yeah, but how many of those points were from RB?
Probably most of them.
Yeah.
Mate, so I don't know. I know what people are going to say though. But your argument at home is going to be, well, Yuki was doing it in a slower car in the RB, so it's not about the driver, it's about the car. You could be absolutely right. I'm not denying that. But I don't believe that Nico Hulkenberg would sit in that Red Bull seat and drop stinker after stinker. Because if he's taken this kick Sauber to those levels, I think he can do it in any car.
Well, you've also got to remember Hulkenberg is a very experienced driver. He's been in many teams, and I mean, okay, yeah, he hasn't had the most outstanding career, but he's, look what he did in that Haas. He did a very good job in that Haas. He's gone to stake, and this car was the worst last year, and he's picking up points. He's getting into Q2s. He's getting into Q3s. He's doing a phenomenal job. But do let us know, would Hulkenberg deserve a seat in that Red Bull team? Do let us know. Do drop a comment.
He is aging like fine wine.
Completely agree with you. Completely agree. Bortoletto, again, I know we say this week in, week out. He finished P14. Another race weekend. No crashes. No car damage. He's doing all right.
He's just bringing the car home every week. And look, this is about next season. We said it about Hulkenberg. He's part of a wider project. Bortoletto is also part of this wider project. Ultimately, look, next season is going to be the real test for Bortoletto. He will have had a season in F1. He should have a more competitive car. So next season is when Bortoletto will receive the judgment, because it's too unfair for us to judge a rookie in what is arguably the worst car in the grid. Because genuinely, I think that there are not many other drivers that would have scored points in this kick Sauber.
No, I agree.
I think Nico Hulkenberg is making them look stronger than they are, because I would argue that, Alpine are not the worst team on the grid, in my opinion. I know they're last in the constructors, but they're not the worst team on the grid. No. They haven't got the worst car on the grid. I firmly believe Kick Sauber have. So, yeah, they're looking ahead to next season.
Yeah, I agree. Alpine, talking of Alpine, Gasly P15, Colapinto P13. Mm-hmm. Look, it was a pretty mediocre weekend for Alpine. Colapinto finishing ahead of Pierre Gasly will probably boost him with a bit of confidence. But there's nothing to really write home about, was it? It's quite a mundane weekend for them.
No, but what we can say is, we said about the Colapinto thing, he's not really provided like we kind of expected him to, or like I think, he was kind of promised to do by this kind of like agenda. But he's had a decent weekend. He's finished ahead of his teammate, had team orders to go past him because he was quicker. So I think Alpine will look at that and be like, okay, well, at least Colapinto showed some pace this weekend, and that's important because they're going to need both drivers going forward, because there are going to be vital points. We saw how important it was last season. Come Brazil, when Alpine had that huge points haul, that completely transformed their position in the championship, and they're going to need both drivers again to step up, because when it matters, they're going to need to be there. So I think they'll be disappointed this weekend, but they'll be happy that they saw some pace from Franco.
Yeah, no, I agree. Haas, Esteban Ocon, P9, Ollie Behrman, P11. Mm-hmm. Look, Esteban Ocon, I think for Haas, we've said throughout the season, they will have their ups and downs throughout the year. They'll be relatively, probably a bit inconsistent with certain races they'll struggle with. Some races they'll pick up points. It was another one of these weekends where Ocon picked up 2 points for Haas. Ollie Behrman just missed out on points. But again, pretty solid weekend for the Haas boys.
It's interesting because I do feel like Ocon's season is kind of going under the radar. Now, I'm not sure what this is, because I remember not long ago, like a month or so ago, I thought he was having a bad season. And it wasn't until we spoke about it and I looked at it properly and I was thinking, actually, no, he's doing all right. And we talk about Isaac Hadjar being best of the rest.
Yeah.
Well, Esteban Ocon is P9 in the championship, just behind Albon, who is truly, statistically best of the rest at this point. And Esteban Ocon is, albeit 20 points behind him, he's right there. And I know it's tight between Hadjar, Hulkenberg, and Ocon, but he's in the mix, and he's actually having a decent season, because we thought this move to Haas was kind of, he's been kicked out of Alpine. He's kind of only been able to go to Haas. They're the only team that have a seat, and they're kind of taking him. But you're looking at it now with hindsight, it looks like an upgrade.
It looks a really good move for him, and he seems to be set. He looks. We've always said with Esteban Ocon, when he had that partnership with Alonso, it was always a bit tense. He then had a partnership with Gasly. Again, we know the history between them two. Mm-hmm. He's now gone to this Haas team where you got a really good team principal who looks supportive, who has the right direction of where he wants to take that Haas team. He's obviously got a very young teammate, rookie as well, in Ollie Behrman. He looks like a much more settled Esteban Ocon to maybe what we've seen over the last few years.
Do you think the whole thing maybe humbled him a little bit?
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, we go back to Monaco in 2024. He obviously crashed into Gasly. Literally, pretty much straight after that, it was announced that he was going to be leaving Alpine. And for a long time before, I think he felt that he was the best driver within that team. He obviously had success he won the Hungarian Grand Prix in 2021 and all of this. So, yeah, maybe it did humble him. Maybe he did actually take a step back and go, okay, I can't do what I used to do. Well, I can't be so arrogant. And he's going under the radar.
I think you could argue that he's probably not been the greatest teammate in his career. I think he'd probably agree. Like you said, fell out with Fernando Alonso, who, by the way, is far from the greatest teammate. I don't think Fernando is well known for his sort of camaraderie and brotherhood, but he has fallen out with him. He fell out with Gasly, and we know the Gasly thing goes back years and years, but this kind of air of arrogance that he's kind of always had. I mean, I think Brazil, when was it? Brazil 2019, when he went to unlap himself and took out Max Verstappen. Yeah. Like, that sort of arrogance of thinking, I can do this. Like, trying to go down the inside of the lap leader in turn 2. It's just insane. And now maybe losing his seat in the manner that he lost it has humbled him a little bit. And yeah, I think
I think he's matured as well. He looks a much more matured driver in a sense of, and I don't know if it's because he's now come into a team where he maybe feels like he's the leader of that team and he has to lead by example. He's got a young rookie there in Ollie Behrman, and he's got to kind of go, okay, this has to put a lot of faith in me to come into this team, give me a seat, and in theory lead this team forward and support Ollie Behrman. And from what you're seeing, he's looking like a good teammate. He's looking like a good solid driver who's driving with confidence.
Yeah, and that's it really. I think he's at the point in his career where if he does want to remain in F1, he has to step up. He cannot just continue to drift and sort of... Esteban Ocon's always been a decent driver. But I think when you're in that category where it's not like, wow, you're electric, you need to bring something else to the table. And maybe that is maturity, and maybe that is, a little bit of humility and making sure that actually you're a really good teammate and you're a really good person to have around the team. And I think that's just what we're seeing from him this season. So no, I think, Haas is such a yo-yo team at the moment, but again, he's there. When you need him to be there, he's turning up. And Ollie Behrman's a rookie. He's got 6 points this season. He's, he shows some pace, but he shows a lot of inconsistency. I think Haas are looking good for next season, and picking up points is a good weekend for them.
Yeah, 100%. Right, where should we go? Shall we go to Ferrari? So we've got
Oh,
Mercedes, we've got Red Bull, we've got Ferrari, and we've got McLaren. Let's go. Let's get Ferrari. I mean, look, Lewis Hamilton starting P5 looked relatively good qualifying for him considering. Then got damaged.
well, because he had good race pace up
Yeah.
until that point as well, and all of a sudden I remember looking at the timing board and I'm just like, where the hell is this time going?
So he hit a. What did he hit?
Uh, a groundhog.
Yeah. Poor animal. He hit, which caused him damage.
Not good for a normal person, but especially bad for a vegan.
Yeah. True. And that kind of just ruined his race. I mean, I think in the end of it, he would probably take a P6 with how his race went. I just
Yeah.
remember looking. I sent something in a group chat of the map of where the drivers were. For pretty much the whole race, Lewis was just P7, just driving around on his own. There was no one
Yeah.
near him. So tough day for Lewis Hamilton. Picked up 8 points. Look, probably the best he could have done with that damage. And he was just pretty much nowhere. Charles Leclerc, on the other hand, starting on the hards. Look, there's always this divide I find between the engineers and Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc goes, I want to do plan C, whatever, D, E, F, G, or whatever. All of a sudden, they're having this discussion, and then out of nowhere, the engineers go, box, box. So they kind of like ask for his advice. He gives his advice, and they go, no, we're going to do this anyway, box, box. So there's always seems to be like this lack of understanding of what their plan is. And Charles Leclerc was pissed, wasn't he, today? Because he wanted to go for the one stop.
Yep.
It didn't quite work out for that point of view. And, you know, coming home in P5, look, he had a difficult qualifying yesterday. I think in hindsight, he'll probably take that. But I know there's a lot of questions always afterwards of kind of what they could have done.
Yeah, that's the story with Ferrari. It's what could have been. Unlucky with the Hamilton damage. I think Charles will actually be quite happy with how this weekend ended for him.
Yeah.
Off the back of qualifying on Saturday, this is actually a good result for him. You know, he finished ahead of his teammate. He qualified P8, remember? And he's finished P5 ahead of Lewis, circumstantially, but that doesn't count for a lot because ultimately you look at how the race ended and you look at the standings and yeah, decent weekend for Charles, but yeah, again, frustrating with Ferrari. Just there's always something with that. I don't know whether it's the culture around the team, but there's always something with strategy or the pit stop or there's just always something where it seems like communication between the drivers and the team is not always aligned, and then when the team make decisions, they tend to get it wrong.
Yeah, the only consistency this year is their pit stops. Their pit stops seem to be actually relatively good and consistent.
Yeah.
It's a shame about the rest of the racecraft, but the rest of the pit stops are spot on.
Yeah. Look, obviously, Fred Vasseur, has
Good old Ted Vasseur.
I was thinking of Ted Kravitz. I don't know why.
Who would Ted Vasseur be to Fred Vasseur?
Ah, God, who would it be? I don't know, but that's a man that I never want to meet.
Ted Vasseur.
Ted Vasseur is who is running the team at the moment. Christ, whoever designed this car, Ted Vasseur, it's not good. He's come under a little bit of scrutiny because, I mean, kind of rightfully so. Okay, Ferrari have said they changed 95% of the car. Now, they ended last season very strong, and their reasoning for this was, well, we had pretty much got the car to its potential limit. Like, there wasn't much more. I would argue, how would you know that? How? Like, how are McLaren able to push the car forward, but you have to completely redesign your car? and this is what, you know, we can't just keep pointing the finger at the team principal, because they've changed team principal, they've redesigned the car, they've changed drivers. Something is not working at that team. Like, what is it? It can't always be that. You have to look somewhere. And I think Ferrari have a really poor culture at the team that is just hindering them. I'm sure they're all very passionate and they all want to win, but it feels like not many people have winning mentalities.
Answer me this quickly. I know we're going to go off topic here. So obviously we know reports a few weeks back, and I don't think we've discussed this on the channel, that Christian Horner was supposedly linked to Ferrari. Again, just speculation out there. But I want to hear your point. I want to hear your view on this. If Christian Horner went to Ferrari, do you think he could turn that team into a winning team? And if so, how long do you think it would be? And I know a lot of people will say, well, actually, Christian Horner is great, but you got to remember Christian Horner had Adrian Newey, Jonathan Wheatley, all these people around him to make that team successful. But I want to hear your view on it.
It needs someone who is going to come in and revamp the culture. They need. Ferrari haven't been a winning team since 2007. You know, and I know they've had spells where they've done well, but you know, I've said it many times. Ferrari remain the laughingstock of F1, and that's because the expectations are so high for them. And
Yep.
you know, I sit here as a Lewis fan. I completely back Ferrari. I want them to be on top, because that means that Lewis is going to be in the best car. And, you know, I also really like Charles Leclerc. I've always backed Charles. And ultimately, Ferrari are an iconic team. You know, Seb said, everyone's a Ferrari fan. And, you know, it's true to an extent. So, it's just, I think it's frustrating seeing them perform at a level that they just shouldn't be performing at. It's like this, it's just not, it's not good enough. And, you know, do I think Christian Horner could walk in there and transform the team? Maybe, but I don't see what he would do any different to Fred Vasseur. They need to do something. They need to change something that is deeply rooted in that team.
Yeah, no, agree. Do let us know. Do drop a comment. Let us know what your thoughts are on that. So let's go to Red Bull. Max Verstappen P2. Yuki Tsunoda ended up finishing, where did he finish? P12. Another disappointing day for Yuki. But Max, P2, he takes that Red Bull to the next level, doesn't he? He actually did a very solid race today. And I always think Mercedes had it in the locker to cover Max throughout. So I think Max will be relatively happy with P2 today.
Yeah. Max is not going to mind P2. Oh, look, I know he wants to win every single race, but he didn't have the pace today. George Russell deserved it. You know, Max will be over the moon that Lando ended with a DNF, but ultimately it was a good day at the office for Max. Started P2, finished P2. The Mercedes looked quick. George was faultless throughout the day. So yeah, Max is going to be happy. He's still well in this championship fight. Like,
if you ask him, he's not. But yeah, we all know that he is.
Max Verstappen is what he's 40 points behind Oscar Piastri, 43. I know that's a lot of points, but it doesn't.
It would have been less. It would have been less if it wasn't for Barcelona.
Yeah, and you know that's where we say sometimes he's his own worst enemy. But everyone was worried that Max was just going to wipe George out in turn one. Everyone was thinking, oh, you know, they're going into turn one. It's going to be a bloodbath, and we're going to see wheels flying everywhere. And it obviously wasn't the case. George got a very good run off the line, which unusual to not see Max.
Max isn't that stupid.
Yeah, you know, what's Max going to do? Number one, ruin another race of his, or number two, you know, do something naughty and then get a race ban. Like, Max will know fully that he's in the championship battle here. He lost his head last week. Now, we can't afford to do that again. You might be able to get away with it once. You'll be lucky if you get away with it once. You won't get away with it twice. So, yeah, he did exactly what he needed to do. Stayed cool, attacked him, where he got very close and he attempted it, but didn't happen, and P2's great.
Yeah. I agree. Before we get on to McLaren, let's just finish with, let's just go to Mercedes. George Russell, pole position yesterday, won the race today. Very, very good weekend for George. And he just looked in control the whole weekend. Very professional drive. And I know you've said on the podcast, he is in this championship battle. And with performances like that, you can't argue that he's not. But again, very surprising for Mercedes, picking up a P1 and P3, especially with how hot it was. Everyone was expecting Mercedes to struggle with the degradation.
Yeah, well, it didn't happen. So I'm under the impression, correct me if I'm wrong, that Mercedes brought some upgrades this weekend.
Yep.
Yeah, looking like they worked out pretty well. Kimi looked quick. Got P3 in the end. An 18-year-old up on the podium. So Mercedes have had the best weekend of everyone. That's what we're
Isn't
going to
it
say.
great? Isn't it great though to see, Kimi's come into this sport, and I've been impressed with him. And we spoke recently about whether he's a generational talent, and some people agree that he is, some people agree that they don't. He's not. But for him this weekend, and you saw how liked he is by fans because they were chanting his name during the post-race interview. He's class for the sport, and to get his first podium is something special, and I'm delighted for him.
We're so likeable, and he's just a kid. I mean, sometimes I still feel like I'm 18, but I'm 11 years older than Kimi Antonelli, and that's why we kind of got to be careful about what we put out there. I know we're not the biggest podcast in the world or whatever, but when you put a clip on TikTok and it goes viral, I'm not saying Kimi Antonelli would ever see anything we post, but he's an 18-year-old boy, and if he came across something like that, I wouldn't want it to come across as some sort of some form of hate, because it's really not. No. I think it's a genuine discussion to be had that Kimi Antonelli, not by his own choice, has been labelled as generational. Now, all I was saying when I said that is but he's not someone that is striking me at this point in time as a generational talent. I think he's a very good driver. He's having a very good rookie season for an 18-year-old, and now he's got his first podium. It's good to see, and I hope he just carries the confidence forward. And I want to see him start getting closer to George Russell, because George Russell has outqualified him 9-1 this season. Yeah. George has pretty much double the amount of points. He has more than double his points this season, and for Kimi to be stepping up into that category, and I know he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders because of the level of expectation, but ultimately he should want to come into the sport and fulfill that level of expectation. And I'm not saying he's not trying and he doesn't care, but I want to see that from him. I wanted to see Kimi come in to the team, and to be honest, I wanted to see him really go head to head with George, and we haven't seen it just yet, but hopefully this is something that can spur him on.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I suppose it kind of goes back to the same as Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris. Piastri, was outdone by Lando in his first season, and I think for Kimi this year, if he can actually pick up a few more podiums, get some more, decent performances, pick up a good amount of points, this will really give him a good amount of confidence heading into his second season in F1. So I think for Kimi, he's doing the right things at the moment. He's picking up what he needs to. He's had some good performances, getting his first podium in F1. I think heading into season 2, that's when it'd be really key for him.
Yeah. next year's going to be a big year because all of a sudden he's not a rookie. He's still got the expectation. Granted, he's still young, but he's not going to be cut the slack.
New era of cars as well.
Yeah. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. The McLaren incident. Okay, so look, Oscar struggled off the line. He got outdone by Kimi. Very good overtake from Kimi. Mm-hmm. Both different strategies with regards to Oscar and Lando. One was started on hards, one started on mediums. But all throughout that race, I felt like McLaren, and before we get on to the incident, I felt like McLaren were too slow in the decisions on pitting Oscar. And I put this in the chat, didn't I? Because I was kind of like, well, they've pitted Max, they've pitted, George, they've pitted Kimi. Why aren't we pit? They left it another 2-3 laps later before they actually pit Oscar. By doing that allowed Lando to close in the gap even closer, which kind of meant come towards the end of the race, they were actually very close together. With all the back markers as well and the DRS they were getting from back markers, it brought Lando Norris back into fold against Oscar. And we've said throughout that actually eventually something will happen between these two.
I mean, they even said it. They even said it themselves just recently, and I wasn't expecting it this weekend either. No,
it was a bit of a shock for me this weekend. So, look, Lando Norris. Look, I'm not going to be harsh for Lando because he came out afterwards and said, "Sorry guys, that was my fault."
But what were you thinking, Lando? Yeah. Come on, what were you thinking?
There was no. Oscar was too far over. There was no gap for that. And actually what Lando could have done, he could have actually even taken both of them out. So both of them, I mean, they're well ahead in the constructors anyway, so it would have made that much of a difference. But they were both, he put both their cars at risk there, and they didn't need to do that. They really didn't need to do that. Lando could have come behind, finished a couple of points behind Oscar. It makes him 12 points.
I'm pretty certain Lando would have finished ahead of him anyway. Lando had the pace.
Yeah.
It was kind of a typical Lando thing to do, where it's, we said in qualifying he bottled it. He didn't sort of bottle it. He bottled it. What I find weird is you've got his engineer coming over the radio, like babying him a little bit, and then you get to the race and he does something like this, and I feel bad for him because it's probably going to eat him alive because this shit just keeps happening. Whether it's this crash. I know this is the first time, but like crashing into someone or messing up like a vital quali lap, or making an error in the race. And if he genuinely wants to be in this title battle, he has got to stop doing that. I mean, today has massively impacted his chance of winning a title, and it was in such a stupid move. I don't even know what he was thinking, and I am glad that he came out and sort of put his hands up. I don't think he would have ever not either. It was so blatantly his fault. He knew it. It was crazy. I was almost like, when I watched it, I was like, what? Like, how has that even happened? How has a driver that good made an error like that? And I know we've seen it before because it's very similar to Button Hamilton that we saw in 2011, but this was Lando, you're in a championship battle.
Yeah, and it was because when watching it down the straight, I could see Oscar. He was already over anyway. It wasn't like he was moving or anything like that down the straight. And Lando, I was just kind of like, mate, why are you going so far over? Yeah. And then, but next thing you know, his front wing's gone. Right. Yeah, like it made no sense to me. And I think, yeah, like you say, it will eat Lando alive. But this is another prime example of someone who has been around the sport long enough now, and you can't use the excuse that actually, it's his first proper championship battle. No, he was in it last year, okay? This is a driver who should have learned a lot from last year, but he's making the same mistakes because he can't hack the pressure. He can't hack it. He should have been leaving. Worst case scenario, he would have left Canada 12 points behind Piastri, okay? That's nothing really.
And I stand by the fact he would have finished ahead of him.
Yeah, and he probably would have. One more lap, he would have got him. But he's now leaving 22 points behind. That's almost one race. And I know, again, it's still a long season and that can change. But Lando Norris, once again this weekend, bottled it in qualifying and DNF'd in the race. It's just not good enough, especially when you've got drivers like Max Verstappen, who is in the championship battle, and he's in P3, 155 points now. He's 21 points behind. 21 points behind Lando. Again, that's one race win. Lando takes himself, or DNFs, whatever. That's one race win for Max Verstappen, and he's capable of that. So, I always sound like I'm the one who's going off on Lando. I'm not, but I've been pretty consistent in what I've been saying about Lando, and it shows. And believe me, I would love not to be right, and I'd love it that actually we have a proper championship battle. But Lando Norris, you can't keep making those mistakes and coming out after going, oh, sorry, that was my fault, because people can't keep defending you for that.
Yeah, he's got to step it up. He'll know that. But look, it's a long season. Lando still has a lot of time to turn it around. Yeah.
Just quickly on that, there was somebody posted a comment.
Wait, can I just also give you a heads up? I've got 5 minutes worth of recording left on this memory card.
Good. Okay, I'll be really quick then. Okay, so somebody commented on one of our videos about Lando yesterday about qualifying, and they put now Piastri has just proven he cannot handle the pressure, squeezing his teammate down the straight when he was clearly slower, so Mr. No Mistakes has just crumbled and taken out his teammates. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Oscar Piastri. Box Pod.
What do you see what I mean? Like, do you know what? You should have to do a fucking IQ test before you're allowed to comment on people's posts. That genuinely, if you are that stupid, then you should not be allowed to have a phone. You shouldn't even be allowed a phone, let alone social media apps. It's just, what are you on about? Squeezing what? So now Oscar, who's going for a world championship, is not supposed to race his teammate. Oscar did absolutely nothing wrong there. What happened was Lando, for whatever reason, drove into the back of him because he thought he was going to be able to overtake him on the grass. I mean, anyone who is blaming Oscar Piastri for that situation is genuinely brain dead. You're going to need some help because you're not going to make it very far in life. And this is not even like a subjective issue. It was objectively Lando's fault. Okay, he even came out and said, sorry, my bad. He literally said it himself, and you're going to sit there and comment, oh, I can't be arsed, man.
It's not great. Just quickly, who was your driver of the day?
Good question. I'd give it to Nico Hülkenberg.
It's interesting because I've got 2 honourable mentions.
Yep.
Before I give you my driver, my honourable mentions go to Nico Hülkenberg. Solid drive once again for him. Thought he was brilliant. Fernando Alonso, again, I thought it was a very solid drive from Fernando. But for me, driver of the day has to go to Kimi. Getting his first podium for Mercedes, it's just brilliant. He was a very, very solid drive from him. He looked in control. At some points, he was close to getting Max as well. Delighted for Kimi. For me, driver of the day.
It was an impressive drive from Kimi, and it was impressive to finish ahead of the McLarens, who have been so dominant this season, generally. But again, you could look at George. What a solid race from George. Yeah. He faced a lot of pressure from Max Verstappen, dealt with it incredibly, and then had the pace to run off and win the race. So yeah, there was a few great performances out there today.
No, do let us know who was your driver of the day. But that is the end of the podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Canada, unfortunately, you were a bore fest. We said in our group chat earlier, let's bring back the likes of Mazepin, Sargent, Latifi. Make it a bit more interesting because they're bound to be the people who crash or whatever.
Fuck some shit up. That's what we want.
But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Do check us out on all social media. We'll be back next week previewing Austria. As we know, last year, Max, Lando, it was an interesting one last year. So hopefully we might have some more entertaining race next in Austria this year. But yeah, all the topics, do drop a comment. And we'll see you next week for a brand new episode. Bye-bye.